Hi, YFP community. Corrie Sanders here, host of the Pharmacy Innovators segment of the YFP podcast. Pharmacy Innovators is designed for pharmacists navigating the entrepreneurial journey. In this series, we feature stories and strategies that help guide current and aspiring pharmacy entrepreneurs. Today, we have Dr. Jamie Wilkey, a PharmD who loves what she does and brings passion and happiness to the pharmacy profession. Jamie has had a varied career from working in retail pharmacy to owning, scaling, and selling her own company. She also works as a consultant for top universities. Jamie is optimistic about the future of pharmacy and knows great things are ahead for those pharmacists who are willing to push boundaries, think big, and use the full extent of their education. Today, you can find her happily living debt-free with her 4 boys and being outside as much as humanly possible while enjoying Utah's national parks. I'm excited to share so many points of growth from Jamie's optimistic perspective and hope you will find this episode to be inspiring from not only the lens of pharmacy, but how Jamie's attitude and perseverance has served her work-life balance. Please welcome to the podcast, Dr. Jamie Wilkey. Jamie, welcome to the podcast. We're excited to have you here.
Thank you, Corrie. This is going to be so fun.
And I know that you've done a lot of podcasts in the past. You have a very public content platform, so we won't go too deep into your background. But for those that don't know you, why don't you just start with briefly describing your path in pharmacy with school and training and any additional certificates you might have?
Sure, Corrie. So I grew up in Wyoming. So I went to University of Wyoming Pharmacy School, which was one of the best decisions I ever made. Graduated as a 24-year-old, and I started making a 6-figure salary, and I was like over the moon. Like, this is why I went to pharmacy school, so I could be a girl with a doctorate degree, earning like $130,000 a year, and not have a career ladder. I could just do that and go part-time when I had kids. And so that's what I did. I worked full-time for a few years. And then I ultimately had 4 little boys, 2 years apart, bam, 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 bam. And it really helped to have a pharmacy job where I could just go part-time during all those years of having babies and toddlers. And so I worked part-time for many years at Walgreens. Ultimately, after 10 years, I had still been at Walgreens, and I felt like, oh man, this job that I thought was like so perfect, and it really did serve me well for a decade. There's no career ladder. There's no growth. I'm like on the hamster wheel doing the same thing, and I'll probably keep doing it for another 30 years unless I change something. And so, Corrie, really the thing that changed my whole career was just getting on LinkedIn. Until then, I didn't even have a LinkedIn account. In the summer of 2020, I created an account to look for a new job. And once I saw other pharmacists on there, like doing their own thing, not just working retail, hospital, or as an MSL, it felt like I was coming out of a dark cave into like the light of potential. And it was just so exciting to me to see that, like, oh, I don't have to rely on getting a new job or getting more certifications to build a dream life. Like, these other people are doing it themselves. I'm going to jump in the race. I can do it too. I have no idea what I'm doing, but clearly, like, your future is determined by you. And I want to just try my hand at it. So I got on LinkedIn and started writing on there every day, kind of documenting like what the heck I'm doing. Like, here I am, this retail girl. I have no residency, no fellowship, no certifications. I've literally just been clocking into a job for a decade and only doing the CEs required to keep my license. Like, I loved my job, but I was not overly engaged in being a pharmacist. And so it was really cool seeing that, like, it's not the smartest person or the most qualified person who can build their own thing. It's just the person who thinks they can. And so also I saw the pattern very quickly that, like, the people who have an audience, who are teaching other people, who are like monetizing their knowledge in some way, are very consistent at writing online. I was like, well, that's free. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm like such a nerd for habits that, like, I will set a habit every single day to write online every day. So that's what I did. And it ultimately turned into me turning into an entrepreneur and starting my own business, because by writing not only on LinkedIn, but I was like on Instagram, because that's the only social media account I had, and learning about pharmacogenomics. I started like posting to my friends like, hey, did you know a genetic test can like change prescribing for the rest of your life? I think this is so cool, but I want to try this on someone. Does anyone have trouble with like medicine that you want to like let me practice on? And so many of my friends raised their hands, and neighbors came out of the woodworks that like, oh my gosh, I'm struggling with medicine. Can you help me? That I started building a business before I even had a business, before I had an LLC or had done any of the paperwork. And so it was really cool to like validate ideas out of the gate in a really scrappy way that was totally me. Um, to just start earning money. And Corrie, I tell you what, once you like actually charge for your services as a pharmacist, oh, it like lights a fire under you that like, wow, I just earned way more helping one patient on a Zoom call than like a day in the pharmacy. And so it was really cool and empowering to one, see how working in a new way like lit a fire in me, that I wasn't just like a robot checking the boxes, that I could like help people in new ways. And two, that like what it was like to help someone and to get a raving review and like really feel like I helped their life. So once I did that, it felt like, okay, the time is ticking on my retail career. It's been cool, but I can't do this forever. And so it was so scrappy, Corey, like just talking to friends and neighbors, reaching out on LinkedIn to prescribers out here in Utah. I built my own consulting practice where I saw patients remotely and in their clinics, and just was like a pharmacogenomic pharmacist. And how did I become that from a Walgreens girl? I got a certificate. I did like the 16-hour CE certificate, like, yay, now I'm PGX certified. Like, it took a week. It was not hard because we're drug experts and we just so undervalue our expertise. And the biggest learning you get is like by actually doing it and by helping. And people don't care. They just know like you're a drug expert. If it takes you a while to figure it out behind the scenes before you meet with me, I don't care. Just help me. And so that was really cool. Okay, that was kind of long. I'll start to speed it up now. And so as I'm like helping people one-on-one, I'm also building on LinkedIn and sharing like all of the ups and downs of entrepreneurship. And a number of people started reaching out to me on direct messages and like, hey, I love what you're building. Can you teach me how? And so ultimately it's like, guys, I'm still at Walgreens because you can't just quit your job overnight unless you're completely financially independent. And I'm working in the crux of my time. And I have 4 kids, So I have no time, but I want to teach other pharmacists this. And so one of my friends gave me really good advice. She's like, Jamie, just create a little mini online course. That way you can teach people at like their own speed. It doesn't take your time. Create it once and just help them that way. And so that was awesome advice. So I just did. And Corrie, I tell you what, that first course was like so awkward and bad. I just like got on Zoom and recorded like 12 different lessons without like a PowerPoint or anything. It was just me talking. But it had the core of what they wanted. And I sold that to 11 people for $500. Like, here you go. Tell me what you liked. Tell me what you hated. Tell me what I could have improved. And they were really candid and honest and saying like, I loved this. This I could have used more of. Don't include this. And so what turned out as my scrappy product, then I could polish and redo, like re-record with good visuals and resources. Then I could turn around and sell it for $1,000. And so that's what I started doing in mid 2021. Started selling my online course just through my LinkedIn posts, not like ads or anything, because I still don't know how to do ads. Started selling that, and it grew and grew and grew and grew and grew and grew. And ultimately, after 2.5 years, I'd earned more than $1 million in revenue from that little course, which was just wild to me to see how like one digital asset can grow in value and in reach. So ultimately we helped more than 350 pharmacists understand and build like their own pharmacogenomic practice. And it was really cool. Where do you want me to go with this story?
It's okay. I'm gonna break it down even further, but I think that was a great bird's eye view to start with where your training was, where you spent a lot of your initial pharmacy experience, then ultimately where you saw a gap and a need in care and how you pivoted to something that could be monetized in a sustainable working way over time. So I'm going to chunk it up just because I want the audience to really learn about your mindset and the steps that you had taken at certain points during that story. Let's start with your path to entrepreneurship in general. So it sounds like you heard about pharmacogenomics through some kind of source and you're like, wow, this is something that's totally applicable to practice. And while you were still practicing in retail, you started building out a pharmacogenomics consulting company. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Yep. So reaching out to different providers on LinkedIn, and then ultimately, were you working part-time at Walgreens at that point,
Yeah.
and you were able to take on a couple additional days in clinic? How did that transition look like between your retail position and taking on consulting in either a part-time or eventually a full-time manner?
Yeah. So I was at Walgreens mostly full time. It was probably like 30 hours a week.
Hmm.
And so in my days off, I would see patients when I was not at Walgreens. And then when I ultimately got into a clinic and they wanted to have me there, I just gave them my schedule well in advance and said, like,
Got it.
most Fridays I will be here, like fill it up with my patients on Fridays and just batch it. Like I would love to be here every day, but until then, just batch out on Friday. And they're like, great, we're happy to have you. That's when you're available. Patients don't know,
That you're
like,
not there
they
Monday
don't know
through
behind
Friday.
the scenes, like her next available is this Friday or next Friday. When would you like
Yep.
it? And so it made it easier to batch things and to like validate that this is working and see the revenue coming in because although I wasn't thrilled with my Walgreens job, it still has an awesome paycheck and is still a good job. And so I was not about to
Mhm.
like just burn the bridge, quit, and then hope entrepreneurship works because I have no experience. I've never done this before. I do not come from an entrepreneurial family. So it's definitely like figuring it out. But while you're balancing a job, like a job is such a good resource to give you the safety net to build something on the
Mhm.
side that it felt like, other than missing time watching Netflix, there really wasn't a downside because I'm getting experience and learning. And when people said no or no thanks, like it taught me something too. It wasn't like, well, this has to succeed or it was a waste of time.
Mhm. And then at what point did you make the formal transition? So you've got 4 kids at this point. It's not like you can walk away from a job without a proof of concept going into this new consulting journey. So at what point did you decide, okay, this is it. The model on the side is now something that's worth taking on full time. What did that breaking point or tipping point look like for you? And when did that happen?
Once I crossed about $75,000 in revenue, and it
Okay.
took probably 8 months. I was like, oh, okay. In 8 months, I earned more than I would have earned at Walgreens over that
Mhm.
time. So then the next step wasn't quitting. It was like, okay, just put me on PRN. Like, keep
Got it.
me on the books, but I don't want to be scheduled regularly anymore. So then I would fill in like a couple times a month, like that's back when like COVID clinics were a thing. And like I was still in the system for a long time just to like keep that as a safety net
Mhm.
and still just keep cash flowing too.
Hmm. Hmm. Which I think that's a great way to put it is that this now your full time job has become your side gig and your side gig has transitioned into your full time job.
Yeah.
And any other elaborations on what chapter of life you're in at the moment? So when we talk to pharmacy entrepreneurs, I mean, there's a million reasons under the sun why you shouldn't be making this transition or taking something on, whether it's student loans or kids, or it doesn't meet your retirement goals or your risk, if you're risk averse or risk tolerance, whatever risk strategy that you have. Any other insight into the chapter of your life besides having 4 kids that you were in at that moment that you think was helpful in making that transition or that would be useful to know?
Yeah. So at this point, we have 4 kids. We had bought our house a number of years ago, right after graduation. And so and my husband is working, he's working full time. So there's dual income, which is really
Mhm.
helpful to get a solid financial foundation. So at this point,
Absolutely.
we had our house and were heavily paying it off quickly and had been maxing out our 401ks every year ever since we were like new little workers and have a really good 6 to 12 month savings
Hmm.
of both of our incomes so that like if neither of us works for the next year, could we pay for life? Assuming that like we both lost our job and like couldn't get one for a year. Because I am very risk averse, Corey. I love like stability and I love money and I love being able to make decisions from a point of abundance rather than scarcity. And so
Hmm.
it did. It took, let's see, at this point, it's like 10 to 13 years into my career. So it was not a new grad. I had my student loans paid off. We had no debt other than our house. And he, my husband has a good job. He's an accountant. And so we both are professionals. We were in a really good place financially because we're savers too. Like we
Hmm.
don't have the super big house and like all the
Hmm.
new cars and stuff. So as savers, it felt like, okay, we've been killing ourselves off, like saving and working. My next big crazy goal, Corey, was that like I want to pay off this house. I just want to be completely debt free before I turn 40. And I kept like every time I'm at work, I'm like crunching the numbers, like, okay, how many more years at Walgreens? How many extra shifts doing overtime? I felt like, okay, I could do that in 5 years. But after I got on LinkedIn, it kind of ruined me seeing that, like, but you can also make money other ways. So I just got to try this. Like, can I maybe get there faster or in a more fun way than like physically being at that retail store while like I don't want to leave my kids, especially with COVID. It made it very apparent that like white collar workers can grab their laptop and go home. Everyone else, like, you're on the front lines, you're a hero. And like, I don't want to be a hero. I want to be with my kids and earn money in a new way because I'm kind of jealous of all like Utah. The corner of Utah I'm in is called Silicon Slopes because there's just like so much tech and software development that it feels like it's in the air that like work in new ways, do cool things. And here I am like an antiquated pharmacy job. So it felt like I just got
Clock
to
in,
try.
clock
At this
out.
point, I just got to try. I don't have much to lose other than, I don't know, nothing. There's always a job at big box stores.
No, and that was really insightful. I love how you shared how much savings you guys had between you and your husband and the risk strategy that you had taken on. And not only some of your already accomplishments with your debt, but what were your debt goals long term. I think that that's so important to outline prior to making a career transition where there's a lot of risk involved, is knowing what the backup plan is or how much time you have before that backup plan needs to be activated. So it sounds like you and your husband had a lot of healthy conversations prior to that jumping point in which you already had a proof of concept. So,
Yes. And we're
my
both
next,
savers and really like,
yes.
since this is the Your Financial Pharmacist podcast, like truly saving gives you such a buffer. And I really think it's kind of a secret sauce for succeeding in entrepreneurship is that you don't like need your business to turn a profit the next day. You don't need and are white knuckling it saying like, I have to have a paycheck by the end of this week. It becomes
Mm-hmm.
more fun and like a creative pursuit that's like, this is a hobby that I'm going to figure out, but I'm also going to get paid from too. And it's so different and it's so fun.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that your clientele and people that you talk with can also tell when you're coming from a place of abundance versus scarcity, as you said earlier,
Yeah.
with having to make that next sale versus making the next sale when it fits into their timeline, not necessarily yours. It's such a big difference.
Yeah.
So the next question I want to talk about is when you made the transition. So we talked about how you started transitioning into content creation for pharmacogenomics for other pharmacists. When did that happen? You were consulting for how long? And then when did you notice on LinkedIn, okay, this is something that other pharmacists are looking for, and I'm going to start now doing this on the side in addition to consulting? What did that look like?
Probably like between 3 and 6 months.
Oh, wow.
So it was still pretty fast. So
Yeah.
it was still new-ish, but I think that's part of what made it work was like, I'm new with you, but I
Mm-hmm.
figured out the next 3 steps and we're doing this together. And I never wanted it to be like, I am the best. I know the way. I am perfect. More like, here's what I've learned. Here's general principles. Now, within this program, we're all coming together and we're all precision pharmacists and we're all going to help each other and teach each other because there's not only like one way to do something. What works for me in Utah may be different for someone in Arizona. And like, we're
Mm-hmm.
pooling knowledge and pooling resources rather than like, I must have everything figured out. Because I think that's what it stops a lot of pharmacists. Like, until I know
Sure.
everything and I have X amount of experience, then no one will help me. In a way, being vulnerable and being you and saying, like, I hate retail, I got to get out. And I'm passionate about precision medicine. So I'm doing this one way or another. Like, makes it easier to jump on board because people can see themselves in you when you're first starting too.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's something I've always respected about you is the amount of transparency that you share with your audience and with the academy is I'm not here to tell you, do I know every answer, but I'm here to tell you that I'm going to work through this with you. And I think that's such a better business model than preaching you have all the answers. So I love that it's so much more relatable. With that transparency comes a lot of relationship and building abilities. But I just love the line that you said, I'm here to learn with you and I'm here to learn alongside you and help you get to the same end goal. You have a similar goal in mind. So and that was Arches LLC, is the LLC that you eventually started. What did Arches look like over time? So you start with just 11-minute video or 11 short videos, and then you started putting out more visual content and you started growing the audience. And did you eventually start growing employees? What did Arches evolve into over the next couple of years?
Yeah, so for the first year, it was just me. And then I hired my first VA, virtual assistant, because being married to an accountant, I know all the details of like employees and how complicated an employee could be. So I, we never did hire an employee. It was all contract work. And especially it was really just me. I hired one VA. It was a good learning experience for both of us, but then I found like my BFF VA, Alexa. She's still like my best friend. 6 months later, as a recommendation from a friend, and she and I just like tag teamed it and went full force ahead. That she really was the one who ran the company, and I got to like be the face of it and provide the content, and she did all the back end logistics that take a lot of time, and I'm not a detail oriented person, and so it worked really well. And hiring people from the Philippines are the best because they have an amazing grasp of English. They're such hard workers, and they're at a price point that new business owners can afford rather than someone in the United States. And I am a little afraid for the US workforce because everyone I've worked with from the Philippines is like just such an incredible human and turned into a good friend that like it was a great way to start hiring. So it was me and Alexa. It originally started with like just pace yourself videos of like, what else do you want? I'll create this video. And then we created a private group on Facebook. So we had a private Facebook page. And that way we're like talking to each other every day. And then we'd have live weekly calls every week. We would learn something else or have like a guest come in and speak on something that was adjacent that I wasn't an expert in, like nutrigenomics. Isn't it amazing how nutrition is affected by your genetics, and have like nutrigenomic speakers and labs come in. And so I recorded all of those and added it to the course. So by the end of 2 years, there's more than 70 hours of material in there.
Wow.
Which was huge, but it was also really awesome because it felt really comprehensive to understand like how to start a business, how to work with a lab, and giving people like labs themselves to work with and how to understand state rules and regulations. And then we started creating like documents and templates. Like, here's a whole bunch of legal forms you're probably going to need to start. Don't hire an attorney for $6,000 like I had to do. Here's a good baseline to start with. And then like maybe legal advice can help tweak it rather than everyone starting from scratch. So we started like pooling like what people needed and created group resources as well. That was really fun.
That's amazing. That's amazing. It's worth joining the academy just to save on the legal fees. And then at what point did you start considering selling the business? So I think that this is maybe something that you haven't discussed on a podcast just yet. So I'm excited to dive into this. But how long had you had Arches LLC to where you hit a certain inflection point where you're like, wow, this is now something that I can consider selling. This is a worthwhile brand. When did that come into conversation, and who brought that to your attention, or did you bring that to the attention of others?
Yeah. So it was 2 years in. 2 years in, I felt like I was working with a mentor who was helping me with like webinars and how to sell. And he wasn't actually like a person who did that. He runs a company similar to mine, except it's for finances. And I just met him through a friend and saw what he did. And I was like, oh my gosh, teach me how to apply this to my program. But he wasn't like, I'm a guy who teaches webinars. I was like, no, I saw what you did. Teach me how to do it. So it was really cool. And after that, he just said like, would you ever consider selling this? Because what you have is such a smooth running machine. Would you ever consider selling it? And at first I was like, no, this is my baby. I love it. But then after planting that seed, and over the next couple of months, seeing that like, oh man, like these students are doing so well. They're outgrowing me because I can't keep seeing patients, growing my own practice, and doing this own business. They're two, although it's the same topic, two very different businesses. That it felt like it's probably the most responsible thing for this group to bring in scalable leadership, because I'm a very scrappy starter, Corrie. I love like starting things and building from scratch, but I don't like maturing things and scaling. I've learned that about myself. I don't even like working with teams very much. Because ultimately, so it's me and Alexa, and then we hired a couple of the students to help with marketing and to help like nurture the relationships in there, which was awesome. But I also found myself like, I just don't like teams. I just want to build my own thing, you know? And
Mhm.
so that combination of seeing my personality characteristics come through and the sustainability of what I had and wanting to like serve these people best rather than keeping it as like my pride, like, no, this is my baby. I'm going to keep it. I really want to do what's best for this group. And so I I told him, I was like, I don't know how to sell a company. Who do I talk to? And so he introduced me to someone in Utah who buys and sells companies. And he was awesome, turned into a really good friend. And he helped me list the company and talk to multiple buyers and sellers. Well, I'm the seller, multiple buyers. And it actually turned out kind of funny because right before we had a buyer who was interested and was sending a letter of intent. And he's like, actually, can I just buy it with my friend and we'll run it together? Because I've seen the books. Like, I love this. Can we just run it together? And I was like, cool, I'm down with that. I still want to like learn from you and hang with this group a little bit. And so we did it. And so we sold it and we each got a third of the company like in ownership. And it was really cool to work with two people outside of healthcare who
Sure.
have a lot of experience in scaling companies and multi-million dollar companies. And so I considered it like an internship into like how business is done and how to like really help this group and scale it in a more sustainable way than like me just trying to like Google and figure out like, okay, how do I do this next? So
Mhm. Mhm. And I
that's
want to
what you
highlight
asked.
on a couple things that you've said because I think these are so valuable to the listener. And I know that these things are not generally taught in pharmacy school. So you said, I am just a scrappy starter. I like to start and build things. One, definitely not taught in pharmacy school. And then maturing and scaling of a business, also not taught in pharmacy school, two very, very different skill sets. But you also said, we leaned into mentors, into resources outside of healthcare, which a lot of pharmacists were just so siloed into our own little bubbles, our pharmacy bubbles. I think it's important to view healthcare and view your services through the lens of someone who is not involved in healthcare at all. And it sounds like that was really instrumental, especially at this building and scaling and selling portion of your business. It would be hard to find a pharmacist, I think, that was so successful in that niche. But I love how you took on the lens of, I'm going to use this as an internship into how to build businesses because that will be a useful skill set, I'm sure, for you in the future once you decide what your next steps are.
Yeah.
So throughout this selling and building process, you had these two gentlemen who it sounds like you met through different networks. Who else had your best interest in mind? So your husband's an accountant, but what other resources did you use to make sure that you as the seller were doing your due diligence and your homework, and this was going to be something that was beneficial not only to your academy but to you as well?
Yeah. So my husband as a CPA is really good. Don't underestimate accountants. I think you can use one instead of an attorney for most business questions, especially like reading contracts and understanding like if you're getting your fair share. Accountants, oh my gosh. Pro tip, be married to an accountant. As an entrepreneur, like it makes your life so much easier. And unless they give you the answer you don't want to hear, then it's really not. Um, so I had him, and then I did hire an attorney to help like broker the deal and make sure everything looked good. But I don't know, I'm a very stress free person, and so it just felt right. And I was like, yeah, let's just do it. So it
Mhm,
was great, pretty simple
mhm.
and easy. I think it took like 2 weeks from start to
Wow.
finish, from like an offer to close. So easy.
So did you have a certain price point in mind? Was that something that that team brought to you? Was that something that outside evaluators had brought to you? Where did the price point come into mind? And then how did you guys, if you don't mind me asking, divvy up ownership of the company?
Yeah, so the attorney I was working with helped navigate the price point. And my husband did his own math too and was like, yep, that seems very fair. So I got a 6-figure payout for selling my company, which felt incredibly good, as well as I got to keep the cash from the company, which I had saved up a ton of into too. And then we just we created a new entity and all three of us owned it equally and then moved the company into that entity. So it was a separate entity. So I still own Arches Health as my company. I just run it under a different name now.
Got it. Got it. And so what are your responsibilities with this new company? So I'm assuming that's Wealthy White Coat is what this has evolved into.
Mhm.
What day-to-day responsibilities do you have with Wealthy White Coat? Or when you sold the company, that was a clean slate and you are now free to roam and do something completely different?
Well, it was an evolution. So that was a year ago. We divvied it up 30, 30, 30, and then this January, February, I sold my share. So now they're running it themselves. Um, so over the course of the year, I was still like the one talking to the students and like keeping that relationship up. And they were the ones helping put in systems and to scale and to find like partners and different income streams. Cause all this time I've been doing like one income stream, like a year-long membership, that is it. And so they're helping diversify different price points and ways to enter and how to, scale and bring more resources. So I had the fun part of like being able to just keep doing what I was doing and like have the conversations, help people, and keep giving them resources that they needed. So it was
Mhm.
just fun.
So still being the face of the company to some extent, managing the
Yeah.
client relations. Okay, that's interesting. That's good
Because
to
those
know.
pharmacists are so great. I still like, they're just the best, Corey.
You're like, those are my babies. The business
Yeah.
is my baby, and you have a special connection with each of them. So
Yeah.
that's easy to understand. And Jamie, any big lessons along the way? So we've covered a pretty extensive amount of ground in your professional career to this point. We've talked about your transition from retail to consulting to creating something that can be bought and sold by other pharmacists, and then ultimately selling that business. Any big lessons learned along the way or big takeaways that come to top of mind when you're thinking about an audience of pharmacy entrepreneurs? And I'm sure a lot of them want to get to this point of success. Any thoughts or any lessons that you think are worth sharing?
Yes, two. One is just start. Just do the thing. Put yourself out there. Start solving a problem in the world and don't overthink it. Like put your energy into action. I know our profession is so good at like overthinking and being perfect and trying to like get all of the education so that we are the perfect person to help, but like just helping and bringing your why you're helping sets you apart from anyone because everyone else is learning, 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 stressing, writing a plan. And if you're out there doing, you're going to run circles around people. So
Mhm.
do, do, do. And secondly, I would say strongly, I love digital businesses and online businesses because there's just not the risk there is with a cash intensive business like opening a pharmacy. You have to
Mhm.
have the building, you have to have the products, you have to have the staff, you have to have the insurance. Like the startup cost is $500,000 at least versus like a digital business, something you can do with just you and your laptop. You can start. I think I funded myself $2,500 from my own checking account to start, and I've never had to like put money back in because it's all been profitable from there.
Mhm.
Um, there's just no risk and it's a lot of reward. And even if it, and don't think of it in terms of like, will this win or lose? Will I succeed or is this a waste of my time? Think of it as like, I'm learning how to be relevant in today's world because it's very different than anything in the past, especially with pharmacy. And those who can adapt and like meet the needs of the world in a new way, you don't have to have anyone's permission. Go do it. And it's just really fun and it's not a risk. I feel like it's riskier just to stay in your job with no other revenue options than to like build something on the side a few hours a week and think in terms of years and decades rather than needing a quick buck tomorrow.
Mhm, mhm. I think that's really valuable insight. And I completely agree with you. I think that the way that pharmacy is heading, it's going to bode well for those that think outside the box and that take on additional business ideas or opportunities that really leverage our clinical skill set. Because I just feel very strongly with the development of technology that pharmacy is going to look very different in 10 years. So
Yes.
just starting and doing and cutting down on the Netflix and exchanging time outside, I
Yes.
feel like the payoffs are really there. So, Jamie, what do you see next for you? Did you, when you sold this business, did you have another idea in mind? Has that started coming to fruition, or are you just really living in the moment and taking in the fact that you've built a successful business and been able to sell it at a price point that gives you some personal capital to do what you want. What is next for you on the horizon?
So I'm gonna have the best summer of my life this summer with my kids and work very minimally, and just really enjoy what I've built. I'm such a high achiever and like always wanting to build the next thing and go go go. But I'm intentionally stepping back and like I just want to hang out with my kids and enjoy my garden and be outside all day because I love being outside. Um, I'm going to do that for this season. But then Corey, this fall, my youngest, goes to first grade. So for the first time in 13 years, all of my children will be at school all day. And there's not like this huge interruption with like right now he's in half day kindergarten. So like my whole day is broken up. I'm going to focus and I want to build something big and awesome that I can really like sink my teeth into and like be in it for the long run for pharmacy. And I'm actually really interested in communities. I feel like communities are the next, not the next big thing, but like the next really effective way people learn and grow and change. As someone who's built online courses, I know online courses are awesome, but almost no one finishes them. And it's very up to like the person who's doing it, their impetus to finish. And I'm so
Mhm.
intrigued with communities and bringing people together in like a private place that helps them grow and support each other because we're all humans and we just need connections with each other. And I don't know. I'm I'm figuring that out, but it's going to be something with a community, and it's going to be awesome, Corey.
Yeah, I think that that's very natural to want human connection and human support. And you are placed in a perfect position as someone who's built a pharmacy community in a very niche area of what does that community look like and what worked well and what didn't work well, and being able to build off that, I think will be a very successful starting point for you. So I'm excited to see where that goes.
Well, even if it's not, it's just going to be fun. Like that's how we figure it out. Like, and I almost want an element like I need to doubt it's going to work to do it anyway. Because if you can't wait until something feels like okay, this is absolutely a slam dunk. I think you have to have an element of like, is this more than I can chew? Is this a little too ambitious to be the right size of project for me or for you, for anyone that like, if it feels so easy, then it's it's probably not right for you. Like a little bit of growth and stretching and like that scariness of like, could I really do this is good for us and part of the thrill of pushing ourselves.
Jamie, do you think that that's a characteristic that you always had, or do you think that wanting to lean into growth and personal development was something that you realized is a priority once you took the transition into being an entrepreneur? Because I'm thinking of the average pharmacist who is going to hear that and be like, I do not want that. I want something that's a slam dunk. I want something that I know is going to be something that I can count on every month. I feel like pharmacists are just very risk averse in general. So do you feel like that's always been in your nature, or do you think that now you've had a taste of it, that's what you want to do and that's part of your higher purpose and bigger purpose?
Well, I'm an oldest daughter, so I feel like it's like baked into who I am. But also like really seeing what it's like to earn money yourself and how much you can earn and how consistent it can be that like I just can't go back to a job that's out of my control again like because I love not having risk and I don't feel like what I do is risky. It just takes time, so less Netflix for me.
Mhm.
um, it feels like the ultimate long-term strategy that almost no one else is going to do because it takes work and a job is more comfortable. So like
Mhm.
I strongly believe I am like the least risky person, but I have a long timeline and I'm willing to experiment because I know that like this is what it takes to succeed is like trying and being in public and doing in public. And most pharmacists don't dare do that. It's like the scariest thing to say, like, tell the world what you're building. I'm working with a couple one-on-one clients right now, and that's where some of them are at the point. I'm like, okay, you've built your business. Now I need you to create a social media post just like on Facebook or Instagram, wherever you are, and just tell people what you've built so they can celebrate with you. You're not asking for like clients yet. You're just saying like, "Hey, I started a business. Like, go female power." They won't do it, Corey. They're like, "Oh my gosh. No. No, I'd rather just teach about diabetes than say I have a business because that feels salesy and like I don't want people to see me like, well, you have to be able to present yourself online to help people, and it's not salesy,
Yes.
and it's
In
fun.
the world of digital business, this is par for the course at this point.
Yeah.
And
So it's
I
just par
had
for the course.
and I had a friend actually summarize something for me at one point, which is why I started looking into the transition of being an entrepreneur and working for myself as well. He does very well in something that's not healthcare related, but he's rewarded for how hard he works. And he told me, as a high performer and a high achiever, I will never be in a salaried position because it would take away a lot of my drive. And I feel like when I heard
Oh.
that, it was a light bulb in my head of, I'm working so hard and I'm not going to go anywhere in a percentage increase of my income in a substantial amount of time. And so for me, that was such a light bulb moment. And I think that's kind of summarized by what you said, is that now that I make money for myself and I know what that tastes like, that's how I want to keep my income for years to come. So I also, one of my last questions, Jamie, is what other streams of income have you leaned into at this point in time? So I know that you have teaching experience. It sounds like you still have some coaching going on. Are you keeping your hands busy with anything else aside from the pharmacogenomics business and Wealthy White Coat?
Yeah. So I have a couple streams of income that are pretty fun that I've built kind of for myself. That is awesome. That we hear about recurring revenue. And now I'm like, oh, I did that a few years ago. So now I get to enjoy it. So a couple ways I earn money. All right. I do have some one-on-one people that I work with that like have found me through LinkedIn, and like we've just jived. So I'm helping them one-on-one. It's way less intensive than like a full program, but it's really fun and energizing for me and for them. I also teach for the University of Florida. They have me help review, update their curriculum, and proctor some of their courses within the precision medicine program in their school of pharmacy, which is awesome. It's so fun. And my old boss, who he used to work at Walgreens. Now he works at the Student Health Center at the local college here. He asked if I would come Thursday afternoons from like 2 to 6 p.m. to help fill in while he goes to choir practice. And I was like, you know what? I actually let my license lapse. So let's see what it's like to be a pharmacist and like get a steady paycheck again. So I've actually started doing that again, just like for the fun of it. And it's been really cool, Corrie, to have like W-2 income and my own income all mixed together. That because there really is something to say about a job, and like that you can clock in and clock out and earn a good salary. Pharmacists have a good salary. And for me, I kind of ebb and flow with employment, that I like it, but then I can earn so much more myself. But then just that ease of like clocking in and out. So it's been kind of fun to go back and forth, because first I swore off pharmacy, like I'm done. And now, like, you know what? This is actually pretty fun in this environment with like these cute college students who just need birth control, Adderall, and antibiotics. Like, I could do this. So those are the mainstreams I have. I also do some advising and speaking, but that's anyway. Most
Oh,
of
but
what
you
it
know,
is. It's so
the
fun.
underlying thing is that one, you can continue to pivot as a pharmacy entrepreneur. So you let your license lapse, who cares? You can go back and get it. And it's not a huge deal if you want to go back to something that you've known in the past with the W
Hmm.
2 job. But two, when you described all these things, you're saying it's so fun. Every single job you've taken on is so fun. And I think that gets lost in this traditional education wheel where we go from undergrad to pharmacy school to residency to certificates to additional training. All these things, you just continue on in this wheel, and so much of it is performance based that you lose touch with why we really went into pharmacy. At least that's how I feel. Is I got to
Yeah.
a certain point where I just looked back and I was like, wow, I've done everything right, but it still feels wrong, and that is scary to me. And so I
Yeah.
love that you're at a point now where every job you describe, you can say it's energizing for me, it's fun, and that's what ultimately keeps you happy and working overtime. Is that it's this cliche sentiment where if you're having fun, you never work a day in your life. Totally get it. But that's the freedom that you've given yourself, is that work should be fun. It should be an energizing part of your life, not something that drains you for 40 hours a week. So I love hearing that you're at that at that point. And I've got one more question, and then I'll ask where people can find you if they want to get in touch with you. But my last question is, what would you say to an aspiring pharmacy entrepreneur? So we shared those two lessons earlier of, just starting and keeping moving. But if you're sitting at the point of contemplating an idea within pharmacy practice and looking at something that's in a non-traditional setting, anything specific that you would share with that pharmacist?
I would say just get vocal and get online because you will stand out, especially if you're doing anything within any realm of healthcare. Healthcare people are silent stalkers and scrollers. So if you have a voice and are consistent, you will stand out and people will attract opportunities to you. And so the tables start flipping instead of you like reaching out like, will anyone work with me? Will anyone want me? If you consistently stick to a topic and teach on it and just own it, people start coming out of the woodwork for you. And it's just the best feeling that you don't have to muscle your way into your own business. You find that like just talk about something, help someone, and more opportunities come to you that like, oh wow, I can work for this person or this person wants to hire me or like it all comes together if you're willing to like stand up and stand out. Because few people are willing to do it. And so really like that's what magnetizes people to you and gets you out of this weird rat race of like applying to hundreds of jobs and getting more letters after your name to feel like you're the best candidate. Don't play that game. It's an antiquated game and you're going to get a position that you don't want. And so even within entrepreneurship, like being willing to stand out because you got to stand out to be an entrepreneurship. And so just practice talking online every day. It might scare you to death, but really like that life skill, if you can get the hang of it, like the right people will find you. The world is your oyster. And just think of it as a skill and not as a personality trait that you either can or can't do because everything is learnable.
I love that. Well, Jamie, this has been so great. I feel like we've covered a lot of ground and you've done so much in the past decade that I think we broke it down into chunks that will be easily absorbed by our listeners. And this is coded with lots of different lessons. So thank you for being so vulnerable and transparent. You've been so gracious with your time and you do that online so well. Where can people find you if they want to learn more about what you're doing and about what you've done in the past or reach out to you independently? What's the easiest way for our listeners to get in contact with you?
Oh, just on LinkedIn. That's like what the social media I use. I love LinkedIn. You should be on LinkedIn. If you're not, create an account. It's the best thing you can do for your career. Find me there, Jamie Wilkey, LinkedIn. Send me a DM. I'll talk to you. It'll be fun.
Perfect. That sounds great. Thank you again, Jamie Wilkey, for being here. Congratulations on all your recent success. And we're excited to see where you go in the next couple years and even long term, seeing where you end up.
You too, Corrie. Thanks.
As we conclude this week's podcast, an important reminder that the content on this show is provided to you for informational purposes only and is not intended to provide and should not be relied on for investment or any other advice. Information in the podcast and corresponding material should not be construed as a solicitation or offer to buy or sell any investment or related financial products. We urge listeners to consult with a financial advisor with respect to any investment. Furthermore, the information contained in our archived newsletters, blog posts, and podcasts is not updated and may not be accurate at the time you listen to it on the podcast. Opinions and analyses expressed herein are solely those of your financial pharmacist unless otherwise noted and constitute judgments as of the dates published. Such information may contain forward-looking statements which are not intended to be guarantees of future events. Actual results could differ materially from those anticipated in the forward-looking statements. For more information, please visit yourfinancialpharmacist.com/disclaimer. Thank you again for your support of the Your Financial Pharmacist podcast. Have a great rest of your week.